Three more countries sever ties with the state of Qatar. What will be the fate of Sri Lankan expats? Circular on importing duty-free vehicles for government servants amended. Kalni River contaminated by oil. MP Namal Rajapaksa indicted on money laundering charges. Ministry pastes its own stickers on public donations directed for the flood affected.
Hello there, very good evening and welcome to your Primetime News Bulletin. I'm Shane Silva.
And I'm Nicola Desura. We start off with our top story.
The Arab states of the Persian Gulf are in the grips of an unprecedented regional crisis.
Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain and Egypt released coordinated statements yesterday announcing a diplomatic break with the tiny yet wealthy peninsula nation of Qatar.
The United States, Russia, France, Iran and Turkey have all called for the row to be resolved through dialogue.
Qatar's ruler postponed an address to his country today over its sudden and damaging diplomatic isolation from other leading Arab nations in order to allow Kuwait some time and room to mediate. Kuwait's ruler Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmad Al-Jaber Al-Sabah called on Qatar's ruler to focus on easing tension and advise against making decisions that could escalate the situation. In a sign of the potential consequences for the Qatari economy, a number of banks in the region began stepping back from business dealings with Qatar. Qatar's Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani said Doha was ready for mediation efforts after Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain severed diplomatic relations in a coordinated move. According to sources, Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan spoke by phone with the leaders of Qatar, Russia, Kuwait and Saudi Arabia on lowering tension. Turkey's Deputy Prime Minister said President Erdogan is also actively involved in efforts to resolve the diplomatic spat between Qatar and its neighbors. Sanctions include shutting down transport links, including closing borders, airspace and maritime territories, which led to fears of supply shortages. The move is a reflection of long-running frustrations with the Qataris, who the Saudis and Emiratis claim are supporting terrorist groups, as well as being far too cordial with Iran, their regional arch-rival. The dispute between Qatar and the Arab countries escalated after a recent hack of Qatar's state-run news agency. It has spiraled since. A complicated and uncertain state of affairs is playing out, with far-reaching stakes. Qatar, after all, is home to a crucial forward base for U.S. Central Command. The U.S. Military Central Command, however, said it has no plans to change its posture in Qatar. Major Adrian J.T. Rankin Galloway said in a statement that U.S. military aircraft continue to fly missions in Afghanistan, Iraq and Syria from Qatar's Al Udeid Air Base. Shoppers in Qatar packed supermarkets for fear that the country, which relies on imports, will face supply shortages after several of its neighboring countries announced to cut off diplomatic ties. As most of the imports to Qatar travel via Saudi Arabia, locals and foreigners living in Qatar rushed to supermarkets last afternoon out of fear for food and water shortages.
As Bahrain, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates sever diplomatic relations with Qatar, the nations have also closed their airspace to its neighbour.
Unfortunately for Qatar Airways, the lack of access to Bahrainian, Emirati and Saudi airspace could have a devastating effect on its operations. That's because Qatar actually has very little airspace relative to the size of the country. While losing access to Saudi airspace will force Qatar Airways into the costly maneuver of rerouting its Africa-bound flights, losing access to Bahrainian airspace could be catastrophic because it almost completely encircles Qatar. That means, should the ban hold up, Qatar Airways flights will need to fly through airspace that it is currently banned from in order to reach its home base in Doha. The airline said passengers holding a confirmed Qatar Airways ticket to any of the 4 countries between June 6th and July 6th are permitted to rebook their flights up to 30 days after their current departure date. Qatar Airways said its officers will continue to operate as normal in affected countries until further notice.
Qatar was named the most competitive economy in the Middle East in 2016 and employs a large number of Sri Lankan migrant workers.
In early 2017, Qatar's total population was 2.6 million, 313,000 Qatari citizens and 2.3 million expatriates. Although it's just 4,473 square miles in size, Qatar is a high-income economy backed by the world's 3rd largest natural gas reserves and oil reserves. The country has the highest per capita income in the world. Qatar supplies 13% of the entire world's natural gas supply. Gas and oil comprise 92% of the country's export earnings. The country's GDP in 2015 was $166.9 billion.
Foreign employment has become the largest source of foreign exchange in the Sri Lankan economy during the past few years.
Approximately 50,000 to 60,000 Sri Lankans each year over the past 2 years have departed the country to work in Qatar.
Qatar has provided the most number of jobs for Sri Lankan expatriates after Saudi Arabia in the last 2 years.
If anyone is going to Sri Lanka with money, it is better to exchange riyals to dollars in Qatar. It is better if you do it in Qatar itself.
And on the instructions of the President and the Prime Minister from New York, I contacted all the ambassadors here, as well as all the foreign ministers in the relevant 6 countries, and I'm gratified to say that it is a matter of a regional nature, which I'm sure will be solved before too long. All I can tell our Sri Lankans that there is no imminent threat of jobs or any problems of that. These are unscrupulous stories being planted just to incite unrest. But all those matters will be brought under control. So there's nothing to worry.
Commercial banks at the Bandar Naik International Airport started accepting Qatari riyals once again, following a statement from the Central Bank of Sri Lanka denying it had informed banks not to accept Qatari riyals. Early in the day, passengers arriving at the BIA have complained that banks at the airport had stopped buying Qatar riyals.
The Ministry of Finance has issued a new circular regarding the importation of vehicles on tax concessions. The circular has been backdated to come into effect from the 1st of this month.
The Trade and Investment Policy Circular governing the import of vehicles for senior executives in management and administration at state institutions and state cooperatives has been amended. The amendments have been made in accordance with the decisions reached during the Cabinet meeting held on the 2nd of May. Tax concessions granted to a vehicle permit holder when purchasing a locally manufactured vehicle or when importing a vehicle have been detailed in the amendment. The registration of a vehicle that is obtained as per an amendment must be registered under the permit holder's name at the first instance. As per the amendment, the ownership of a vehicle which is worth $25,000 or less can be transferred to a third party at any instance. A vehicle that is worth more than $25,000 but falling under $30,000 cannot be transferred to a third party before being used for 5 years, except under the criteria mentioned in the circular. Vehicle permits that were granted from the 20th of November 2015 until 31st May 2017 and vehicles that have received clearance from the customs on or before the 31st of May 2017 cannot be transferred to a third party before being used for 5 years, except under the criteria mentioned in the circular.
The President inspected the progress of the programs that are in place for the people affected in the Hambantota district.
The President held a discussion at the Hambantota District Secretariat following the inspections. Ministers Sajith Premadasa and Mahinda Amaravira, as well as other officials, were present at this meeting. We decided at the meeting of the Cabinet of Ministers this morning to conclude identifying the lands to construct new houses within 2 weeks. The lands might belong to the government sector, the non-government sector, the plantation companies or even the private sector. We will be able to acquire those lands. Identify those lands in the Hambantota district. I inform the government if there are lands that should be taken over by the Ministry of Disaster Management, suggest them to the government. We will take steps to either acquire the lands or we will see what can be done about the suggestions.
Area residents around the water purification plant in Pattivila Biyagama claim that the water produced by the plant emits a foul odour. What is the cause behind this foul odour? Newsfirst investigates. This is the manner in which a black viscous substance can be seen mixing with the water of the Pattivila Ella in close proximity to the pumping station for the water purification plant.
We cannot drink this water. It is muddy and tastes like oil.
There are many workshops and factories in this village as well as the next village. There is a CPC plant. All this is because of waste produced by them. We cannot drink this water. It is disgusting. I believe this is because of the waste from the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation. Over there you have the Pattivila paddy fields. During every flood we can see a layer of black oil. That layer of oil is still there.
We travelled in search of the source of the oil leak. Our journey took us close to the boundaries of the Sapagaskanda oil refinery.
This pipeline comes from within the CPC and they take oil from here. Whatever they throw away washes down here with the wastewater. This has been the way since this plant began.
All this oil is released to the Kalani River. We cannot even drink the water in our wells because there is a layer of oil.
This is the state of the location where the Kalani River and the canal leading water to the river meet.
We have taken steps in this regard. This situation arises from time to time. Yesterday we took steps to shut down this canal. We have completely cut down on waste being released to the Kalani River. We are using pumps to ensure that this does not contaminate the water flowing into the intake of the water plant. This situation with regard to the odor of the water has reduced, and we assure the public that the situation will return to normal by tomorrow.
Locals living on the banks of the Desura had to take measures into their own hands today in order to stop the destruction taking place on the banks of the river.
This lush forest is located in the Mallikeli area in Chilau on the banks of the Desura. The people who live here have been infuriated as permission was granted to mine for sand in the state-owned land within the forest. When we investigated the matter, it was revealed that many trees in the forest have been cut down.
This was inspected by the personnel from Geological Survey and Mines Bureau. 70 cubic meters of sand have been removed. When the Desura breaks its banks, the entire village will be destroyed.
They mine for sand on World Environment Day. They must find out who issued the permits and enforce the law. Today there was a meeting between local personnel from the Geological Survey and Mines Bureau, the Chilau Divisional Secretariat and the Chilau Police.
The riverbank on the other end has eroded. We are aware that the power of money was a cause for this. We have never taken sand for personal use. Yesterday there were many lorries here. They came here to take away the sand.
If sand is being moved, they need to have the permission from the District Agriculture Committee. There was a court ruling. It clearly said sand cannot be mined from the Desura. The recommendations of the Geological Survey and Mines Bureau has not been obtained.
I observed the extraction of 4 cubes, but the issue I have is how did it extend to the extraction of 70 cubes?
A request was made from the Divisional Secretariat because there is a permit for the land. The Grama Niladhari officer was asked to give a report. I never knew that it said only 4 cubes can be extracted. If there is opposition, I do not need to extract sand anymore. The mine is in my land. Let's stop this discussion.
He cannot act like a saint. He has committed a wrongdoing from the very beginning. It is our responsibility to protect the waterways. There were many natural disasters. Why is Mother Nature harmed? We do not want the situation to enter the northwest.
As people continued to protest, the Chilau Divisional Secretary and the police decided to terminate the permit.
Different organizations have come forward to grant aid to the people who were affected by the adverse weather in the country. A situation where these relief items were packed in parcels containing the name tags of different individuals was reported from Galle today.
This was aid that the Galle District Secretariat received from the North Central Provincial Council. Newsfirst cameras were able to capture how these relief items were packed into other packaging at the District Secretariat. When inquired, the District Secretary of Galle responded in this manner. We are adhering to a system where all the aid that is provided to the Galle district by various organizations will be sorted into a uniform packaging. They will be then distributed amongst the families. We have received the packaging from the Ministry of Home Affairs. The identity of the original donors will not be affected in any way by sorting aid into this new packaging. I received reports that several name tags in the original packaging had been removed. There are acts to disrupt this program. There is an internal investigation. The Minister of Home Affairs is Vajrabe Wardana and Galle is his electorate. The minister in question was accused of a number of similar actions in the past. The letter written by Vajrabe Wardana to R. Paskaralingam, who is an advisor to the Prime Minister, asking that the funds that should be paid to a businessman with regard to a government contract cannot be paid, is one such accusation. Even though the minister first denied the existence of such a letter, he later confirmed that he had sent such a letter. Another accusation that was levelled against Minister Wickremesinghe was that he came forward to protect the accused in the avant-garde incident. He was then criticised for appointing Anusha Palpita as the additional secretary at the Ministry of Home Affairs. Anusha Palpita had indictments filed against him in connection to the controversial silk cloth deal. Aid meant for people who are affected is being robbed by officials. This is a disgrace. This disaster may be a sorrowful loss to the innocent people, but to the rulers of this country, the ministers, the MPs who are working regarding these matters, the secretaries and the personal assistants, this is beneficial.
ලේකම්වරුන්ට පුද්ගලික සහකාර ලේකම්වරුන්ට අනිත් අයට ඊටාම වාසිදායක දෙයක්.
The actions of the politicians, these public representatives, when it comes to providing relief to the people who are affected by the weather is disappointing. If the politicians are distributing this aid targeting the elections, that is very disappointing. The Sirasa Media Network was the first media institution to commence an operation like this. They introduced this to other media as well. The politicians have not been able to protect their morality. They are distributing the goods of other people as if it is their own.
Activists have criticised the actions followed in fraud and corruption investigations.
Yesterday, the Divisional Secretary of Yatiyantota, Ranil Kularatne, was summoned to the Bribery Commission with regard to releasing 50,000 rupees for the construction of 2 houses. The complaint was anonymous. The houses were constructed for 2 helpless families in the Taligama and the Valley Helathanna Grama Seva divisions. We used to live in a small shack. Plastic sheets were the walls. Since we have 2 children, we used coconut leaves as well. The house collapsed and we lost everything. The Grama Niladari officer visited the place and told us he will inform the AG about this and get this done.
There has been no irregularity. We have invoices for all purchases made. One family has 2 children with no mother. The father is feeble. 1 child is physically challenged. In addition, we built a house for a girl who was raped by her own father. 50,000 rupees was used for these purposes.
The Cyrilia account was maintained by breaching all monetary laws in the country. They submitted false documents. A statement in this regard was given at the official residence of the speaker. They did the same at the residence of their relative. Detectives are helpless when such things happen. At this time, houses have been built for the innocent people of the country with donations to the tune of 50,000 rupees. A house worth 500,000 has been constructed, but they are using the label of anti-corruption to suppress government officials who did such a deed. The Bribery Commission is acting based on an anonymous complaint. This is complete distortion. On the other hand, details of all responsible organizations have been taken over. The documents have been compiled. These institutions have been very inefficient that an investigation cannot even take place.
A member of the Monetary Board of Sri Lanka has stated that during the first few months of 2015, former Governor Arjuna Mahendran played a dominant role at Monetary Board meetings. Newsfirst's Zulfiq Farzan has more on the proceedings of the Presidential Commission of Inquiry.
Manohari Ramanathan has been a member of the Monetary Board for almost a decade. She testified that, as Arjuna Mahendran has a better economic expertise compared to the other members of the board, he was dominant in the decision-making process. However, after 2 more members were appointed to the Monetary Board, the decision-making process was more collective and democratic. She said the Monetary Board, which convened on the 23rd of March 2015, did not reach a decision to issue 30-year bonds, and there was only a discussion to explore the possibility of issuing 30-year bonds. She went on to say that a decision was not reached to stop the method of direct placements. When Attorney at Law Harsha Fernando was cross-examining the witness, Additional Solicitor General Dapula de Oliveira rose up and objected to the line of questioning, citing that there needs to be fairness in the cross-examination. At this moment, Attorney at Law Chanaka de Silva rose up and made an application requesting that this discussion be taken in the absence of the witness. And for the first time during the Commission's tenure, a witness was requested to step outside for a brief moment as the matter surrounding the notes and minutes taken down by the Secretary of the Monetary Board, dated the 23rd of February 2015, were taken up before the Commission. And thereafter, once again, the witness was summoned inside to lead the evidence and the cross-examination by the attorneys.
Manu Ramanathan added that it was not customary for the monetary board to approve the bonds issued, but simply to ratify the bonds issued by the PDD. JKD Dharmapala, the former chief dealer of the Bank of Ceylon, testified before the commission today as well. He said that according to the BOC Treasury Operations Manual, prior approval was not required for bids made on behalf of other parties, which include primary dealers. He testified that from 2013 to 2015, 75% of the bonds purchased by BOC were under the direct placement method, while only a minimal purchase was done through the auctions. Dharmapala was questioned on his connection with the dealer of Perpetual Treasuries Limited, Kasun Palisena. He testified that after the impugned bond auction, he was transferred from the primary dealer arm of the bank to another department, and was silent when the commission asked why he did not say anything against the transfer if he had done nothing wrong.
Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, addressing the United Nations Ocean Conference in New York yesterday, said that the country is fully committed to the Paris Climate Change Agreement.
My government and I personally have urged the adoption of measures related to the freedom of navigation in the Indian Ocean. We strongly believe that such measures will help to initiate a stable zone of economic progress that can eventually embrace large ocean areas and will provide the stability that accelerates rapid development and environmental improvement. We strongly endorse the Paris Climate Agreement, which was ratified on our behalf by Sri Lankan's President, His Excellency Maithripala Sirisena. We affirm our commitment to the FAO International Plan of Action and are implementing the Sri Lankan National Plan of Action on illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing. Sri Lanka has been devastated by nature-driven tragedies. Right now, as I speak, we are inundated with savage floods causing hundreds of deaths and hundreds of thousands of displaced people. Human misery is unbelievable. We are grateful to the international community, but all this underlines how helpless we are in the face of environmentally sourced disasters. Indian Ocean around us now has the second largest accumulation of floating plastic waste in the world. Cleansing the oceans, assuring maritime sustainability is our future. And we increasingly ask, what is our future unless this is done?
In Parliament today, the joint opposition brought in a proposal which called on the government to withdraw its co-sponsorship of a UNHRC resolution on Sri Lanka.
By now, the government knows that based on these agreements, various actions have been launched to hunt down our war heroes. Special laws are being created for this purpose, in contrary to the country's constitution. The country was lucky enough to have a change in government. When Mahinda Rajapaksa was campaigning, he was saying that there are attempts to send him to the electric chair, so he should be glad that we came into power. In February 2015, I went to Geneva with this election manifesto and said, you no longer have to conduct international inquiries. I said, do not accept such inquiries, adding that as a responsible government, we have been given a mandate to conduct a local inquiry into this. They tell us that this is the only way through which the image of the military can be restored to its former glory. There may be idiots or black sheep even in the army. We will be able to safeguard the prestige of the Sri Lanka army only if we act against the actions of these soldiers. If you attacked or abducted journalists, or if you extorted innocent people and killed them, then such people should not be given any quarter. They should be prosecuted regardless of what uniform, badge or robe they wear. Only then will we be able to safeguard the prestige of our country.
The Movement for Unity Through Power Sharing convened a media briefing in Colombo today.
The cabinet reshuffle has resulted in a number of new issues. Kabir Hashim's state minister has been sworn in, but he does not have an office within the ministry. The secretary is now searching for an office space for the state minister. It shows that this state minister is not being given any room from within the ministry. There was no reshuffle, only a change in two heads, which caused another mess. We clearly state that Malik Samara Wickrama is responsible for this. He cannot contest and win a provincial council seat or a parliamentary seat, but there are big shots in the national list. They decide who stays in the cabinet and who doesn't. They want someone who can steal. That is their plan. This is how the party entered into a downward spiral and how Ranil Wickremesinghe was destroyed. It was Malik who destroyed the image of the party as well. Everyone in the party understands this. When they fully realize what is happening, Malik won't even be able to set foot into Sirikota.
Former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa has informed the Criminal Investigations Department that the Tripoli camp of the Sri Lanka Army could not have been established without the knowledge of former Army Commander Sarath Fonseca. Charges have been levelled against several Army intelligence officers who served at the said camp, including the assault of journalist Keith Noya.
Pertaining to the abduction and assault on journalist Keith Noya was taken up before Mount Lavinia Additional Magistrate Lochana Abe Wickrama yesterday. At the hearing, 6 suspects, including a major who served at the Tripoli camp, were produced before court. Officers attached to the Criminal Investigation Department presented facts before court regarding the statement recorded from former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa. In his statement, Gotabaya Rajapaksa said the Tripoli camp with 37 Army intelligence officers could not have functioned without the knowledge of the Army commander at the time. The CID has already informed court regarding phone conversations between the head of Joint Intelligence Unit at the time, Kapila Hendavitharana, and Director of Army Intelligence Unit, and how direct phone calls were made through to the major who is currently in remand custody. According to the statement by Gotabaya Rajapaksa to the CID, he had made the phone calls to the head of Joint Intelligence Unit, Kapila Hendavitharana, and the Inspector General of Police at the time, following instructions issued by the former president and the editor of the newspaper to which Keith Noya was attached to. The court ordered the suspects to be placed in remand custody until the 14th of June.
It is an insult to the army of this country to carry out investigations by producing other military intelligence officers while hiding the real suspects who carried out the abduction. The objections raised by the Attorney General's Department with regard to granting bail was taken up today and was postponed till next Monday.
Indictments were handed over to 3 defendants, including parliamentarian Namal Rajapaksa, before Colombo High Court Judge Gihan Kulatunga today. Indictments have been filed against the suspects over the charges of violating the Money Laundering Act in earning an income of 30 million rupees through a transaction between Gowers Corporate Services Private Limited and another company. The 3 defendants were present before court today following summons issued by the High Court. The Colombo High Court also ordered the fingerprints of the suspects be recorded. Judge Gihan Kulatunga ordered the suspects to be released on bail that had been ordered by the Colombo High Court on an earlier occasion. However, advised the suspects to be present before court once again on the 28th of June. Charges have also been levelled against 2 other suspects in connection with the case. Attorneys at law representing them informed court today that they are currently overseas.
Indictments are being handed over to us one after another, after they witnessed the massive crowd that gathered in Gaulface. We have no issue with that. However, it has come to our attention that the Attorney General's Department has 17,800 cases pending in connection to women and children. So we humbly request that legal action be taken with regard to the 17,800 cases concerning crimes committed against women and children with the same enthusiasm as they have over indictments to us.
Vidya, who went to school in the morning, doesn't return home. Body of Vidya discovered. Area residents stage a demonstration. 3 arrests made by the police. Vidya laid to rest. Island-wide protests against the crime. 5 more arrested by police. Information comes to light on the attempt to release a suspect who is a Swiss national. CID informs court that a one-sided love affair was the cause for the murder. CID also informs court that another Swiss national had planned the rape and murder. Notices issued by the Kites magistrate for the lead researcher of Gene Tech and lead engineer of ICTA to appear before court. DNA results on the heinous crimes presented to court. CID informs court that report on the Vidya homicide has been sent to the Attorney General's Department. AG's department informs the Kites magistrates that the cases will be filed against the suspects at the High Court. Court orders for financial information on the suspects. Jaffna High Court dismisses the bail application of suspect number 10. Suspect number 11 becomes a state's witness. Suspects number 10 and 12 released. AG's department requests the Chief Justice to appoint a 3-judge bench for the case surrounding the Vidya homicide. Demonstrations in Jaffna calling for the case to be taken up in Jaffna and not elsewhere. 3 High Court judges appointed to take up the case.
A primary school under the Madhu Education Zone was declared open in Pandivirichan Mena under the auspices of the Japanese ambassador to Sri Lanka, Kenichi Suganuma.
The primary school was constructed with aid provided by the Japanese government.
We are very glad to be able to support the education in Sri Lanka, particularly in the conflict-affected area. Education is very important for Sri Lanka's future, so we hope that the children will take advantage of the new classrooms and study well and work for the brighter future of Sri Lanka.
The China-Sri Lanka Cooperation Studies Center of the Pathfinder Foundation inked a memorandum of understanding with the Chinese Communist Party-affiliated China Center for Contemporary Studies.
Signing of the MOU was preceded by a roundtable discussion between the two institutions covering several broad subjects, which included how to consolidate the outcome of Silk Road International Cooperation Forum through Sri Lanka-China cooperation.
We believe Chinese interest in Sri Lanka should stay very strong. But together, China and Sri Lanka together, we have to elevate, we have to clear these fears India, Japan and USA is having. There are 3 questions these people always ask from us. Number 1 is whether China will have a military facility in Sri Lanka. Number 2 is whether majority-owned port projects are facilities for military purposes for China. Number 3, why do Chinese submarine visit Port of Colombo? So together our think tanks, our governments, our societies has a major role to play in clearing these doubts. And China always say Belt and Road Initiative is purely economic, and we have to prove to the world it is purely economic.
This land, which is located in the Gannoru area within the Kandy district, comes under the purview of the Vishnu Devalaya and is considered a residential area. Permission to fill 20 perches of this land and construct a house on the premises on a 29-year lease has been granted to a veterinarian attached to the Department of Veterinary Studies by the Commissioner of Buddhist Affairs. Incidentally, this plot of land has been identified as a paddy land. The Commissioner of Buddhist Affairs had certified that this land was being leased for residential purposes. Although at a glance it can be assumed that a house has been constructed on these premises, upon closer inspection, one can observe that the structure houses 10 dairy cows. Accordingly, it can be concluded that the structure is a cattle shed. While the veterinarian claims title to the land and the structure on the land, a professor belonging to the Faculty of Veterinary Studies at the University of Peradeniya claims ownership to the heads of cattle. Although it has been the government's intention to uplift the state of the country's dairy industry through the importation of 20,000 dairy cows from overseas, this is one example where this initiative has failed. It can be noted that this initiative is another wastage of public funds. The scheme that is being run by the veterinarian and the professor from the faculty are a clear example of the misuse of state funding and can even be seen as an effort to bring down the initiative of the government. Action TV will bring you more details on this matter.
A man has been shot by police outside the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris after he tried to attack an officer using a hammer.
According to French media reports, the suspect has been wounded in the chest.
BBC reports officials stating that this is a terrorist attack, quote-unquote.
France is in a state of emergency since attacks by jihadists in Paris left 130 people dead in 2015. And with that, we wrap up tonight's primetime news. Thank you for joining us. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Nicola De Zoiza.
And I'm Shane Silva. Take care and good night.